In the first video, we talked about some basic patterns to the 4-3-6-6 opening. We talked about why it is necessary that white play 7 in this position and why playing 7 is the only move to win. Uh, Today, I'm going to go into one of the more common variations of this opening. I'm going to, after white goes 7, red blocks on 5, white plays 5 on top. Very typical position here. I'm going to talk about what happens if red plays on e3, and now white either has to, well, two options here. Yeah, he either has to go on c2 here, or e4. Both are possible wins. I'm going to cover what happens if white plays on c2, because that just seems to be the more common move that people play. So white goes on c2. Red has some possible antes here. We can cover some of the weaker ones. For example, let's say most common one is 5. Let's go with that later. Let's say red starts off by playing 2. Just, 2. So he plays 2. White here, again, has several options to win. He can play the very obvious move 4, which I'm sure a lot of people do play, but just to get it out of the way, that white can't be playing a move like 2 or a move like 5. Guess we can explain that. If white plays, let's say white plays 2, and red has to block, well, now white can't take this d3 cell, which is very crucial to his game, because if he takes d3 now, and red builds on top, and I mean, in order for white to win, he has to take this third row on the left side, but if he takes, say he takes this b3, red makes the threat here, and then block, and then there's a double threat here. So white can't really be doing that, and if white, tries this, well then red can just simply block on that, so that doesn't work either. So yeah, that's not very good. If he plays instead over here, well then red blocks the second row threat, he builds on top. White's going to be losing the third row soon. If, for example, if white decides to play on here on b3, well then red can take this, because if white plays on top to make an odd, red kills it like that, so that's not going to work. Instead, or if he instead goes here, well then red simply gains a tempo by playing up the vertical, white has to block, and now red has blocked the center on. If white tries to make it on like this, it would be much too aggressive, because red would dominate the center. Takes this even on the center. Red can also force an odd later on. For example, if white blocks here, let's say red plays here, white has to block. He has no other choice. And then red has a variety of ways to just, force a win. He can play on 6. Maybe the game goes something like this. And then red blocks, block, block. Well, that's just an easy win with the double threat. And if he doesn't play on a1, then well, either way he's screwed, so that's not going to help. So yeah, that doesn't work. If that doesn't work, then we'll go with what works. 3 works, although not many people would play 3, because, well, there's no reason to just give up this odd. 6 works, but we're not going to talk about that, because it's just making things a little more difficult than it should be at this point. So yeah, we'll just assume that white plays on 4, and red has to block. And now white has a very easy way to win. He just builds up this vertical. He makes this pattern of having a vertical on the center column supported by an even. This is a very strong pattern. It's common in some 4-3-6 openings and some 4-1-5 openings, and usually this pattern is very easy to guarantee that white should be able to win here. And yeah, white really has many ways to win here, as long as he doesn't do something stupid. White should probably just take this d5 key square. Note that if red tries to block this... Oh, wait, let's go back. Let's assume that white gets too ambitious and he decides to take this third row, but then red blocks, and then lead to a similar pattern of what we talked about earlier. But now the combination is slightly longer. After white blocks, red makes a threat, makes another threat here, makes another threat, and then yeah, he can make a vertical threat just because he's an asshole. He blocks, and then red just wins. That's that doesn't work. Yeah, so white should just make sure he doesn't do that. Instead, he just plays this, because the idea is that even if red blocks this b3 cell, well then, let's say he blocks it now, white still gets this, what is this, a5, d2 diagonal, and you'll notice that this c3 key square is still being, like, it can't be touched because of this even. So, like, you just play the rest of the game out. Let's say something goes like this or something. Like, he's always going to be able to make an odd, or if we just don't let him do that, and just assume he gives up everything, and then, you know, like, you're still gonna have to, red's still gonna have to give it up, one way or another. There's really no getting around it. So yeah, this diagonal is really just equally as strong as the horizontal here. So you can kind of think of this as like a J shape. You know how in the J shape where you have a thing like this, and then it doesn't matter if the other guy takes this cell or this cell, they're both just equally as good. It's basically the same idea over here. So let's, at this point white has a very easy win. So let's not talk about this ante. Let's talk about another ante. Let's talk about, I mean, red could play something like this. This is not really an ante. It's just like kind of like a stalling move. White has to block here because of the double threat, and then red usually plays here. So it just transposes to, you know, usually if red plays here and white blocks, and then red just ends up playing here anyway. Common move here, let's say red plays over here. Basically the idea of this opening is that you want to win on the left side. So yeah, white doesn't have much. White has to just wait him out. Red can play on here. Makes the odd. And then, oh, white should be careful not to play on not to block here. It's not actually, doesn't really do anything, because if he wastes the move by blocking here and red plays here, white has this, and now red can suddenly win the race to build up the second column. There's going to be a race on the left side of the board where white will eventually try to build up the first column, but red will try to build up the second column, and in this particular spot, red gets first to build. For example, if white tries to build up, red builds, white tries to build, but then red makes the vertical and white doesn't have any threats anymore. Instead of playing this, if white just goes for this, now if red tries this same maneuver, well, now white is ahead because of this possibility, so that's not going to work. So yeah, the idea is that this odd is important to help the building up this column. I mean, white could also play on a move like 6, and if red tries the same maneuver, actually it wouldn't work because now white can make a double threat like this. So that's why 6 would work. So yeah, maybe he plays 6. Now red plays 3. White would have no other choice but to play here, because if he goes here, then red's gonna win the race. Even though White still has the horizontal here, but that's not gonna happen. It's just gonna be the same deal. White, you know, he can't make this because of this, so if he does this, well then red gains this, so that's gonna be a draw. What else am I have to say? Yeah, so this A1 cell usually ends up being pretty important in this opening. Yeah, let's say, again, he plays like this. And we'll say maybe red plays here early, white builds on top, red just, you know, plays on top. White takes the key d5 square. Red could try and build up right away, but doesn't really matter. In this case, even if red can't, even if red is faster to build up the column here, white has another trick up his sleeve by playing on 4, because now white is taking the d6 a3 diagonal, which even after red blocks this column, you'll see that white can still make a nod. For example, if red goes for, let's say, just waits for now, and then white tries to reverse the Zugzwang back to red, and then let's say red just kills this third row, well, this diagonal is going to end up winning for white, as you can see, because it's supported by this even. So that's not really going to, you know, not really going to help. And if red decides to block here first, then white gets a head start on the race, so that wouldn't work either. So yeah, I guess those are the only 2 moves. What else we covered? Talked about this earlier. Basically same idea. White has to play here, and then he either gets this or this, so not really much to talk about there. He could play something like this. Not really a useful move. White has many ways to win. To play on 5 for the odd threat. If red goes here, then once again we just get a similar pattern. If red goes here, then that's even easier. The entire left side is being dominated, so that's not going to work. So that's not going to work. Red still just has to play this. And what else did we cover? Maybe like this, or like this. Talk about this. Oh, maybe he plays like this, or like this. Or it plays like this. Yeah, I'm just rambling. I can't really think of any other antes right now. This is not really a particularly tricky opening. So yeah, I guess after this, white could also win. If he wants to be fancy, he can play 1 instead of this, which would lead to all the other variations talked about. If he plays 1, then red's best bet is probably just builds up the vertical here, but all in all, it's going to be similar. And then the best ante here would probably be to play 2. And now, white has to be careful not to play 4 because of this diagonal. For example, if he plays 4 like in the usual patterns I described earlier, when now red has a diagonal over here and he's got an early start on building up the second column, and white doesn't really have any good way to win if he builds on top, well then he gets screwed by this combination I talked about earlier. So that doesn't work. And if he tries this, well then red just can kill everything like this, so that doesn't work. And yeah, that wouldn't be a good move. White actually has to kill this diagonal, so he ends up having to play 2 here. Red has to block. White makes another even this time. Red has to come here, and now white makes another even up here, and you can see in a formation where you have 2 evens crossing over each other like that, then the third row it's just a guaranteed win because there's no way that red can ever take this or this, so it doesn't really matter what he does at this point. White, all he has to do is build up, red can't stop him. That becomes a very easy win. Other annies, I don't... If he plays 4, white plays on top. Not much to say here. It's just going to be straightforward for him, and if he tries to make the odd here instead, well then white can just... He has a counter odd, but white's going to end up winning with a double threat. For example, he plays here, maybe it goes like this, I don't know. Let's say he gives him the odd, because he has no choice, but because of this diagonal, for example, red has to play here now, but because of this threat combination, white's still going to end up winning. So, yeah. If he plays this, I guess this is another good move. And now, but then white just, again, he just builds up on this column. And there's really not much red can do. He plays like down here, but he could win with a combination like this. Or he could just take the usual move, you just play over here, and then get the diagonal here. And a double threat possibility, can't block everything, so yeah. I think that just about covers everything for this move. Next video I'll talk about this move, and yeah, it's all about, just about all I have to say for now.